everybody. Now we are going to be talking about the circulatory system and gas exchange. Oops, let me back out here. All right, so I'm taking a big shot of this so you can take notes if you want to. We're going to start talking first about the respiratory system, which of course has to do with gas exchange. Mainly we're exchanging oxygen and CO2. CO2, of course, is coming from our cells via cellular respiration, and O2 is needed for our cells for cellular respiration. So we have to get rid of the excess CO2 that we have generated, and we have to take in O2 for our respiration processes. Some evolutionary trends, we're going to go through some of these in a little more detail, but some trends are, first it's done, of course, on the cellular level. That is from, mostly these are aquatic organisms, and the water that is surrounding the cells will have oxygen in it, and CO2 will be delivered into that water as the exchange occurs. So basically it's just done on the cellular level into the water surrounding. This even includes platyhelminthes that has a gastrovascular cavity. Well, I guess Cnidaria does too, but platyhelminthes particularly has the pharynx, they're sucking in water, and the gas exchange is done on the inside of the body cavity as well as the outside. Then some organisms do it directly through their skin. Like some amphibia do it through their skin and have lungs, so that's an unusual situation, but mostly these annelids and nematodes, they are respiring directly through their skin, and it can pass to the cells and or to, in the case of annelids, it'll pass to their blood system, which is pumped around their body via the 5 hearts that they have. Gills are a method that that mollusks use, some Cnidaria use, arthropoda, some chordates use, mostly aquatic groups, we're talking fish here, and arthropodas, some aquatic groups like crustacea or something, they would use gills. And then later on, in terrestrial forms, we have tracheids, which would be in arthropoda, of course, terrestrial groups, and lungs, which are also in terrestrial chordates. Both the gills and the lungs need to be circulated throughout the body via a circulatory system. If you have that handout that I gave you of it's like a whale, and it shows you the 3 systems that are associated with a circulatory system. Those would be the respiratory system, of course, for the gas exchange, but also digestive, that is, nutrients are distributed around the body. And then the last one is the excretory system, where nitrogenous wastes are removed from the blood, from each, the cells are delivering nitrogenous waste to the blood, then the blood goes through the kidney and out of the body, or whatever system we're talking about. Okay, so we're going to talk about these a little bit further. Let's talk about the gill. First of all, if you look in your textbook at this overhead, whoops, this backwards. At this overhead, you can see this is a gill. What has to happen in this case is that the water has to be ventilated over the gill system. So basically they take in water as they swim, they're taking in water through their mouth and over the gills. If they're not swimming, they have to kind of suck water through their gills. And then what happens is, as the water moves past the gills, so it's moving through, it's going to be picking up the oxygen and getting rid of the CO2. So let's just look over here a little closely, more closely here. We have the water flow. So this is the water flowing across the gill. And this is the incoming, this is the incoming, well, I said that wrong. This is the incoming blood. I think I have this, I'm thinking of this wrong. This is the incoming blood, and then this is going back towards the heart, so then it can be pumped around to the rest of the body. So what is happening here is that as the water is flowing over, of course it's high in oxygen, and as it's flowing over, this blood right here is higher in oxygen than this blood over here. This blood is super low in oxygen. So what is happening is like the transport epithelia that we were talking about in a countercurrent. That is, oxygen's high on this side, so it's going to diffuse into a slightly high oxygen level in this vessel. And as it goes over the gill, the oxygen levels are going down, but the blood that is coming in is really oxygen poor, so it's still lower than the amount that is in the water that's flowing past. So this is like a counter current situation. And the same thing would be true for carbon dioxide exchange. That is, the carbon dioxide, of course, would be high on this side, and the carbon dioxide levels would be very low here. And as you go around, the carbon dioxide levels are going down, but the carbon dioxide levels over here are even lower. So there would be an exchange, all right? So that's how the gill basically works. An advantage to the gills, I should leave that on there, I guess. The advantage to the gills is that, of course, you don't have to have a different surface. That is, we're not exchanging or changing states of matter to get oxygen into the cells. In other words, we're going from a water, this oxygen dissolved in water already, into an aqueous solution of the blood. And so the exchange is very simple and easy, and there's always water around, so the water always contains some oxygen. And the disadvantage, of course, is that the general levels of oxygen are kind of low overall, and also that you have to ventilate the system, meaning that they have to work at getting that oxygen running by. All right. So another method is this is, of course, the terrestrial arthropods. They are using the tracheal system. The tracheal system has little, let's see if we can look here. It has little spiracles along the edge of their body. You might have seen these before if you've looked at an insect really closely. And those are basically leading into air sacs that are part of the coelomic cavity that has fluid in it, but also next to the body cells. So this is just showing you a little bit better how that is going. And then this is showing you like what the spherical looks like on the outside. So there's the gas exchange. The disadvantage to this is that you have to change states of matter. That is, you have to go from air to the internal body fluids. So it takes a little bit of doing, and also the evaporation of the water in this system is higher. So all of these systems then have to be internal. You can't have anything towards the outside like you could a gill. So we have to internalize the gas exchange and keep it moist on the inside. So the exchange is easier. Okay, then you have the lungs. The lungs are, you probably know, because we have lungs, you kind of have an idea what they are, and we're going to go over them a little bit more. But first, let's just look at that both the tracheal system, the gills, and the lungs need to be exchanged through the circulatory system. So what's happening is we have a gas exchange into either some vessel or some way, and then that's going to go into the circulatory system, and then we're going to then be taken to the body cells where cellular respiration can occur. So I should have probably put that earlier. Okay, so let's look at the lungs. Now, in the lungs, we'll talk more about the structure of the lungs, but this is just talking about breathing. I think I have this backwards again. Okay, this is something that we do. We call this negative breathing. So what is happening here to get oxygen into our lungs, and that is also to allow CO2 to go out, what we do is we take the diaphragm, which is on the bottom part of the lungs, and we are going to pull it down. So the diaphragm basically constricts, and when that happens, what goes on is that this is what we call negative breathing. It creates basically a suction for the air that's coming in, and when we do that, the ribs come up, pulling the diaphragm down, and that will draw the air in just like you created a vacuum. And then when we are exhaling, what happens is the diaphragm comes up and the ribs come down, and that pushes the air out, or it just basically allows the air to come out easily. Now this is opposed to something like an amphibian or a frog or something like that, mostly aquatic organisms that have lungs. They do positive breathing. That's mainly because they want to decide whether they're taking in oxygen or not. So what they would do instead is they would take air in and push it down, and then that's going to inflate their lungs. And then the exhale, they actually can then just relax and it will come back out. So they have to kind of force the air down. That is called positive breathing.